Zakamaltima, Port Major Degree, Waterloo University graduates Zashtima, Azok Sozom, Wajih humanitarian or research-based organization actually, volunteer, Mohnabe, Bajih Attai, Bajih Usu, Bajih Komeba, that was Zashtim, OGE Arrahan Zakhisa, Atize, Madejale, and Umatele, Zalen Luhan, Fatima, Rohze, Ugabe Rohze, Shonabe, Rohze, Utatwe, Hahan Bediti. Mahatkara, let us give a warm welcome for this Timaj. Give her a warm welcome.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Hey, well, thank you for that warm welcome. I'm going to be presenting this in English, because my Lisan, as those of you who know me, know is not very good. I'm working on it, but inshallah I'm going to present it in English. And if you have any questions, please reserve them for the end of my presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer questions. Any better? Yeah. Okay, good. So my name is Timaj, and I'm here representing an organization called the Harari Nature and Heritage Conservancy. Basically what it is we are an environmental organization. We protect the environment, or we aim to protect the environment, and also to protect heritage sites in Harad and Harargay and greater eastern Ethiopia. So that's what our mission is, and hopefully today I'm going to present a little bit of what we've discovered. So far what we've done is we've done a little bit of knowledge sharing between the members of the group, myself and a few others. And so this is some of the research that we've acquired, and also some of the really exciting discoveries that were made by a member in our group. So here it goes. Okay, so the main issues in terms of the environment that we're concerned about is the water crisis and the forest degradation. So basically, there is a water crisis. It involves not having enough access to water, and also not having enough access to drinkable water. And this is happening all over Ethiopia and many parts of Africa. But in this particular area that we're focusing on, it's happening at a really, really rapid rate. And it's a really complex issue. So hopefully I'll just be able to break it down through this presentation. And the second issue is about the forests in Harargay. And so we're losing a lot of trees at a really, really rapid rate. In eastern Ethiopia and Harargay, the decline is actually one of the fastest in the world. So the trees in Harar are being lost at the fastest rate in the world, which when I found that out, it was very devastating, because it's something that trees are so necessary for life. They give us oxygen, they provide us with food. So it's something that is really, really critical, and it's important that we pay attention to these issues. So who here, just a show of hands, who's heard about some of these issues, the water crisis or the forest, the loss of the forest? Just a show of hands. Yeah? Okay, so you're familiar. So some of you are familiar with it, which is good. Hopefully, I'll be able to provide a little bit more information. Okay, so first I just want to let you know what our organization is all about. I touched on it briefly, but just to elaborate, we are an action group. So we're calling for a stop to the downward spiral of the environmental degradation. And we also, in addition to preserving the ecosystems in eastern Ethiopia, we protect cultural and historical sites, which I'll go into a little bit later in the presentation, and hopefully I'll show you some really interesting photos of some of the stuff that we've discovered and have been discovered by archaeologists in the past. And so the goal here is to provide a sustainable future. So we are trying to not only tackle issues of prevention and really deal with issues that are already happening, but find out how can we make it so that they don't happen again? You know, how can we find water resources that will help the people of Harari for years and years to come, so that it's sustainable? Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay. So this is just a map of Ethiopia. There's in red, I don't know if you can see it, it's very small, but I've kind of outlined the areas that we're focusing on. So just that area over there is what I'm going to be discussing. Just to zone in on it a little bit more, this is a map of the Ahmad Mountains and the Awash River. The Awash River is a really important piece that I'm going to discuss, because it's actually one of the only groundwater reserves that's really sustainable right now. And it's also a region that has a lot of controversy, because as some of you probably already know, the government recently signed a deal to export some of this water to Djibouti. So that means that their water reserves are now, instead of just all going to one region in this general area, it's going to be also going a little bit further north to Djibouti. So yeah, that is what I'm mainly going to be discussing. And groundwater actually consists of 12% of the drinkable water in the world, so it's really important to preserve groundwater. So this is a little bit about the water crisis. To really understand why an organization like the Harari Nature and Heritage Conservancy really needs to exist, you have to kind of break down what it is, you know, we're fighting for, why is there a water crisis. And I was going to ask you a question. I was going to ask you why you think it is, but I kind of went to the slide early, so it's all out there for you. So the first and number one reason for the water crisis is the natural loss of water. So this pertains to climate change. So Harari is, you know, my dad told me actually that Harari is known for like really great weather. Daddy, is that right? Yeah, it's like really, it's always like really nice. So because of global warming, generally speaking, the climate is becoming more humid. So it's an arid, humid climate. And what that creates is an evaporation of the groundwater, of the lakes and the rivers. And unfortunately, a lot of the lakes and rivers, including one of the biggest, the Harari Lake, has been depleted, and many other lakes and rivers are being depleted at a very, very rapid rate. And so this is actually an area with more vegetation. It's a farmland. But as you can see a little bit in the kind of distant regions, it's really, really dry land. And some areas, this is not a picture from Ethiopia, but it's just a picture I found just to illustrate what it looks like when lakes and rivers dry up and what actually happens to the land. The soil quality not only depletes in some areas, but it also just dries up, so you can't even grow any food. Food is a huge source of not only sustenance for everybody, but for income for Harari. As you know, the most popular industries, the coffee bean and chap industry, are dependent on agriculture, as well as just the food that's grown for the locals. So it's really, really important that we focus on. Sorry, my mom's texting me. It's really distracting. Focus on the issue of drought and the natural loss of water. The second reason why there's a water crisis is because of overpopulation. So what's happening is the population is actually growing at a rate of about 3% annually. So because of all the pressure from so many people in the area that need to access the natural resources, there's less to go around. So there's less water, there's less food, and then what happens is when the environment starts to degrade, the poverty levels go up. And so this is something that is really, really important to deal with, but instead of really focusing on the natural climate, because that's something that we can't change overnight, we're focusing on finding water and creating system to get water to people more efficiently. Because the current system that we have, the infrastructure of the pipelines is starting to erode. It's not as effective as it once was. And so that's the third point I wanted to make, is problems with infrastructure. There's problems with the water pipelines. There's problems with finding water and getting it to the right region. So that's just kind of an overview of what the water crisis is and how it's perpetuated. And of course, all of this perpetuates poverty, which is a really detrimental effect of not having clean water, not having water, in addition to the loss of life. So this is why we really need drinkable and sustainable water. The levels of rainwater right now are not sufficient. There's only about 774 millimeters per year in some areas of rainwater. And when you compare that to somewhere like Canada, right, we get, in one thunderstorm you hear on the news, we'll get like centimeters of rain a day, right? So in one day what we get in terms of rainfall is equivalent to, is actually more than what some areas of Harari, Eastern Ethiopia, get in an entire year. And so that contributes to it as well. And so it's really, really necessary that we work on not only finding sustainable water by doing a mapping of hydrological mapping, which is mapping the water resources in the area, but also finding better ways on how to access the water that actually exists. So the water that I was talking about in the Awash River. So another, just to kind of change speed a little bit, another really important aspect of environmental protection is reforestation. So protection of our forests. As I mentioned earlier, we're losing trees at a really, really rapid rate. We're actually the fastest, we're losing it at the fastest rate in the world. About every year, about 141,000 hectares of trees are lost in forests. And this has really detrimental effects for the entire ecosystem. And can anyone tell me one of the effects or one of the problems that may come out of losing trees, losing forests?
Heat.
Sorry? Oxygen, yeah, that's like the main one. Who else?
Erosion. Right. Erosion.
Oh yes, erosion, and also the soil quality. Just to go along with that comment, the soil quality starts to decrease. Anyone else?
People are cutting for cooking food or something.
Yeah, that's a huge, especially in Harari, the fuel is called fuel wood. So using the wood for fuel, because there's not enough to go around. People still need to use it. People still need to cook and heat their homes, but you have to build the trees that are being lost, and that's not happening fast enough. So yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? It's me? No?
Forest fire.
Forest fires, yes. Forest fires because of the, like I was saying earlier, the climate change is contributing to a lot of forest fires in the area. So you guys, it's pretty good. You've touched on most of it. One other thing that pertains to the earlier part of my lecture is the watershed protection. So this is something I learned through doing my research actually, that forests actually protect the watershed. So they actually create more water resources, they protect water resources, and so there's the two main forests right now in the area in Harari are Mount, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Mount Kunto and Mount Hakim. And the first mountain, it actually provides 40,000 people with clean drinking water. So that's a huge amount of people, and there are people that live on the mountain, there are people that benefit from the surrounding area. So this is what it looks like from a close-up view. These are some of the wildlife. These are wild horses that live on the mountain. Their population is also going down. This is what it looks like. Does this look familiar to anyone? Yeah?
like Harari.
Yeah. No? Okay, yes, so that's, and then you can see in the distance the iconic Shadamada. And so this mountain is very important. But unfortunately, the trees are depleting in the area. And so
Listen. We'll talk later.
So there's time for questions if you guys want to talk.
Yeah.
So land management is something that we're really focused on right now. It's in line with our primary vision of conserving these areas, which actually, this is a little bit of a tangent, but this mountain is actually also very famous for something else. Does anyone know?
Yeah, the mountain called the W Mountain.
Yeah. What else? There's one more thing.
Our Hakim.
No, that's Mount Hakim. I'm going to get to that.
I think
Shadamada? Okay, yes. And one more thing to add to that. It also, they found on these mountains, they found prehistoric paintings, like hieroglyphics, from civilizations thousands of years ago. And so it's actually a really interesting heritage location. And so that's one of the other things we do is to try to protect heritage sites. So that's a new discovery that was made on this mountain, and there's much more exploration that needs to be done. But of course, the primary focus right now is on protecting the ecosystem on this mountain. So that's just kind of like a fun fact. This is what it looks like close up. And so the second mountain I wanted to discuss is Mount Hakim. So it's known for the popular hyena feeding and the festivals that happen there. Do you like my picture? Okay, so two of the main reasons for forest loss, can anyone tell me? Two of the reasons? There's two reasons why forests are being lost in these areas on these mountains. Pardon? Yes, that's one of them. I actually don't have that, but that's an important one. Anyone else?
changing the environment, like.
Yes, changing the environment. So I have that here as drought. So drought is the number one reason because when there's a drought, of course, climate change happens, and then the fertility in the soil declines. So when you don't have fertile soil, you can't grow new trees. When you can't grow new trees, even the trees in the surrounding area begin to die. So that's what's happening.
This is the most essential part, the reason why the forest most forest, especially in the mountains, are very old, and when they cut it down, they don't replace it.
Right.
Nobody replaces it, and because of, I don't know, because of the economy, or they just they chop it off and they sell it, or they use that as fuels.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are main reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if everyone could hear, but what's your name, sir? Abdul Hakim in the front here said that, and he's absolutely right, that one of the main reasons for the loss is that people, they cut the trees down, it's called deforestation, but they don't reforest the region, so they don't plant more trees. And so that's now it's starting to happen. The federal government is actually starting to pay attention a little bit more. So a recent report from the UNEP said that it's actually Ethiopia is actually the African country with the worst ecosystem degradation. So I think this has made the federal government pay attention a little bit more, and they have a program put in place, not just for eastern Ethiopia and for Harari, but also for the greater Ethiopia. So these are just some efforts by the government. It's called the 5 Development and Transformation Strategy. And so this strategy, Harari is included in this strategy. But unfortunately, the reforestation that they're focusing on, so they're focusing on reforestation and soil conservation, it's not happening at a fast enough rate, it's not happening enough. So it's actually, I don't want to say it's insignificant, but it's not happening fast enough to keep up with the cutting down of the trees. So there needs to be an alternative answer, and that's where our non-governmental organizations come into place. That's where the call to action for the Conservancy, the Harari Nature and Heritage Conservancy, is really, really critical. So we want to actually create projects of reforestation projects after kind of surveying the reason for the, some of the areas why they're losing trees, and after kind of doing extensive research, taking that evidence and planning massive reforestation projects. Of course, this requires a lot of funding, and this is not a fundraising plea. I just want to introduce you guys to the topic so that you know in the future, if you want to support something that's really going to help sustain the future of Harar and its people, this is something really great to get involved with. So that's something that I just wanted to bring your attention to. And the project that the government has going on, I forgot to mention, is called the Harari Environmental Protection Agency. But again, it's not happening fast enough, it's not happening enough. So we really need to do something else about it. We really need to have an alternative. So that concludes the section on the environment. Does anyone have any other questions about that? Because I'm about to talk about heritage a little bit after this. Any questions before we move forward? No? Okay. Yeah? In the back? Are you just stretching? Okay. All right, so thanks for listening to this, by the way, for being so interactive. This is actually going a lot better than I had planned. You guys are really, really great. And I'm glad that this is piquing people's interest and that there's passion about this sort of thing, because it's something that I'm very passionate about. So as I mentioned earlier, another thing that we aim to do is to protect heritage sites. So I don't know if anyone knows this, probably some of you know this. Harar is actually one of the few countries in the world that have been announced to be a UNESCO heritage country. So that has a lot of weight. That means that it attracts a lot of tourism, and it's something that everyone in the world knows, that we are known for our vibrant and our unique heritage. And this is just, some of what we're known for. And so we want to preserve heritage sites, not only because they're, really cool to look at and have been around forever, but also just because it's part of our identity, it's part of our legacy as a people to have these heritage sites. It also helps the economy immensely by adding, it creates jobs, it adds to the tourism economy in Harar, which is a huge a part of the economy. So this is something that we're trying to protect and preserve for future generations. And so recently we've actually made a lot of really interesting discoveries. Well, not me, I don't want to take credit. Someone on my team, he goes by the name of Maftush Crash. You're going to see a picture of him soon. This is one of the areas that have been discovered. And when I say discovered, I mean have been explored on an archaeological basis, because there are people who live here. So it's not something that's new, the people see it all the time, but this is the first time that it's been identified as a heritage site. And these are actually ruins of the villages of Harla, which is about 30 kilometers from Harar. So the Harla ruins was recently found. This picture was taken by one of our board members. He's in the middle over there with the camera and the water bottle. These are some of the local children. The three guys in the middle are the team that went on this archaeological expedition in March. So it wasn't even that long ago. It was very, very recent. This is like hot off the press. You guys are getting like the first inside scoop. Yeah, so this is another discovery that was made. The image on this side, my right, is is an old home in Harla. It's actually a ruin. We don't know how old it is yet, but judging by the picture, it's obviously not from the century, and it hasn't been lived in for quite some time. And so it's actually just out on the outskirts of Harar, and the home beside it on the left is a traditional Harari home. Does anyone see the resemblance between the two? Yeah, they look kind of similar?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's evidence of just how old our heritage, our culture is, and the archaeological similarities are really stunning because these regions are so far apart. And they were built at a time when, traversing 30 kilometers is not common, right? You didn't have planes and cars, and so there was a lot of migration, and there was a really expansive kind of society, and that's just evidence of that. So that's a really interesting finding. And these are Islamic coins. They're approximately, they date to 1039, 1053 AD. They're also found on the ground. This is like one of my favorite. It's a game board. I should have let you guess, but it's a game board. And this is like, this is before like chess and checkers and Monopoly and all of that. This is actually one of the oldest leisure tools or games that in all of Africa. It's called the Mankala game board. It's a stone board, one of the oldest games. And I think it's really just fascinating to see, that our people have